How does it feel to build something from nothing, only to watch it be stolen right from your hands? How does it feel to give everything for family, only to realize you were never truly a part of it? Tonight, the chandelier glows warmly over the grand dining table, but the air is ice cold. A single sentence is about to change everything. A legacy rewritten. A betrayal sealed. And she will sit there, watching the empire she saved slip away. But not for long. Because some betrayals don't end in tears. They end in fire. Stay. Watch. Because this is only the beginning. The air inside the Quinn estate was thick with the scent of aged wine and roasted lamb, but for Ivy, it might as well have been suffocating. The long mahogany dining table, adorned with silverware and crystal glasses, suddenly felt like a battlefield. She had spent the last 10 years pouring her soul into Quinn Technologies. When the company teetered on the brink of bankruptcy, she had been the one to pull it back. She had built the logistics software that revolutionized their industry, turning their family business from a failing relic into a market leader. And now, after everything, after the endless nights of coding, the sacrifices, the blood, sweat, and years, she was about to be erased. James Quinn, her father, sat at the head of the table, swirling his wine glass, his expression unreadable. Across from her, Henry Quinn, her younger brother, leaned back in his chair, wearing that infuriating smirk she had grown to despise. Then came the words that shattered everything. Henry will be taking over as CEO of Quinn Technologies. For a moment, the world went silent. Then, the words slammed into Ivy like a tidal wave. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. This had to be a mistake. What? Her voice was steady, but the storm was already brewing inside her. James let out a sigh, as if this was some minor inconvenience he had to explain. Ivy, you're brilliant, no one denies that. But leadership? That's not your strength. You're an engineer, not a visionary. Henry chuckled softly, tapping his fingers against his glass. Don't take it personally, sis. Business is business. Ivy's stomach churned. Business? This wasn't business. This was betrayal, cold, calculated, and absolute. I built that company, she said, her voice razor sharp. I saved it. And you're giving it to him. To someone who's done nothing but sit on the sidelines. James' gaze darkened. Watch your tone, Ivy. Her jaw clenched. She knew her father, knew that once his mind was made up, there was no changing it. But she had to fight. If this is about tradition, about passing the company to a son instead of a daughter. James cut her off with a wave of his hand. This isn't about gender. It's about leadership. Henry understands the business world. You belong in a lab, writing code. Henry leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. I mean, if it makes you feel better, I can let you keep running the IT department. His smile was pure poison. Ivy's breath came in slow, controlled inhales. She had fought battles before, but this wasn't just a loss. It was an execution. Then James did something that made her blood run cold. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a $50 bill, and tossed it onto the table. Consider this a thank you bonus for your efforts. Silence. Ilara Quinn, her mother, sat frozen, her eyes darting between her husband and daughter. But she said nothing. Ivy looked at the crumpled bill in front of her. For a second, the temptation to throw it back in his face burned through her veins. But she didn't. Instead, she stood. Smooth. Controlled. Unshaken. She didn't plead. She didn't yell. She simply pushed back her chair, turned and walked away. Let them think they had won. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Ivy arrived at Quinn Technologies the next morning, her heels clicking against the marble floor of the lobby. She expected hostility, but she hadn't expected this. Her office, gone. Completely stripped. The nameplate on the door had been removed. The desk, the monitors, even the chair she had spent thousands of hours working in, vanished. A cold voice snapped her attention forward. "Looking for something, sis?" Henry. He was seated behind the CEO's desk, her desk, one leg lazily crossed over the other, his fingers drumming against the armrest. His expression was smug, infuriatingly relaxed, like he had just won a game he hadn't even played. "You're early," he mused. "I was going to have HR tell you, but since you're here." He leaned forward, his grin widening. "Congratulations, Ivy. You're officially the new IT support specialist. You know, since you're so good at coding and all." Ivy didn't move. Didn't react. She just stared at him. That smirk. That arrogance. They wanted her gone. They wanted her to break. To beg. She did neither. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked out. No words. No protests. Just silence. Because Henry didn't know it yet, but he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. 2 weeks later, Ivy sat in a dimly lit cafe in downtown Manhattan, a steaming cup of black coffee in front of her. Across the table sat 3 people, her people. Jack Whitmore, CFO. Ruthlessly brilliant, with a mind that could turn pennies into millions. He had seen through Quinn Technologies' financials better than anyone, knew every loophole, every weakness. Myra Caldwell, data analyst. She didn't just study numbers, she predicted movements. No one understood the company's clients better than she did. David Lancaster, lead engineer. He had been by Ivy's side when they built the original software. He was the only one who could help her build something even greater. They weren't just colleagues. They were warriors. And they had chosen her. "Quinn Technologies thinks they can erase me," Ivy said, her voice steady. "They think they can push me out, and that I'll just disappear." She let the words hang in the air, watching as her team exchanged knowing glances. "They are wrong." Jack smirked. "So what's the plan, boss?" Ivy leaned forward. "We build something better. Faster. Smarter. And we don't sell it to them." Myra raised an eyebrow. "Then who do we sell it to?" Ivy's lips curled into a sharp smile. "Their competitors." That night, Phoenix Innovations was born. 4 months later, inside a towering glass skyscraper, Ivy sat across from the CEO of Hamilton Logistics, the biggest rival of Quinn Technologies. A contract lay on the table between them. $50 million. "This software of yours," the CEO said, flipping through the documents, "you're saying it's 10 times more efficient than what Quinn Technologies is currently using?" Ivy met his gaze. "I'm saying it will make them obsolete." Silence. Then the CEO chuckled. "I like the way you think, Miss Quinn." He picked up a pen and signed. "Looks like we have a deal." And just like that, the first domino fell. Within weeks, clients began dropping Quinn Technologies like dead weight. Their once loyal customers saw the numbers, saw the future, and that future wasn't with Quinn. It was with her. The empire James and Henry had stolen from her was crumbling. And she was the one lighting the match. The storm hit fast. One by one, the contracts that had kept Quinn Technologies afloat vanished. Clients who had once been loyal to the company jumped ship the moment they saw what Phoenix Innovations had to offer. The new software was faster, smarter, and exponentially more efficient. No one wanted to be left behind. By the end of the third month, Quinn Technologies had lost 60% of its revenue stream. The board was in chaos. Investors were pulling out. The once proud Quinn name was now a cautionary tale of arrogance and poor leadership. Inside the company's glass-walled conference room, Henry paced like a caged animal. His suit, once impeccably pressed, was now slightly wrinkled. His confidence gone. "We need to cut costs," he snapped. "Fire whoever isn't essential." The executives glanced at each other, uneasy. "You mean fire the people who actually know how to fix this?" one of them asked. Henry's jaw tightened. "I mean fire anyone who isn't loyal to me." And so, he did. The best engineers, the most experienced managers, the employees who had spent years building Quinn Technologies from the ground up, all gone. In their place, Henry's yes men. People too afraid, or too incompetent, to challenge his decisions. It was a disaster. Meanwhile, James Quinn sat in his corner office, staring out the window at the city skyline, his hands clasped tightly together. The empire he had spent his life building was slipping through his fingers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He knew the truth. There was only one person who could have saved them. But he had already driven her away. And his pride wouldn't let him bring her back. While Quinn Technologies drowned, Phoenix Innovations soared. 6 months. That's all it took. 6 months, and Ivy Quinn had built a $500 million empire. Her company wasn't just successful, it was unstoppable. The biggest names in logistics, tech, and supply chain management were now lining up to work with Phoenix. Investors were pouring money into the company. Ivy had done more than just win. She had rewritten the game. And now, the whole world was watching. The pinnacle of her success came at the Silicon Valley Tech Summit, the most prestigious event in the industry. Hundreds of CEOs, innovators, and venture capitalists filled the grand hall, all waiting to see the brightest minds in tech. On the massive stage, Ivy stood at the podium, poised and powerful, as the announcer's voice rang through the speakers. And the award for Innovator of the Year goes to Ivy Quinn, CEO of Phoenix Innovations. Thunderous applause erupted. Camera flashes exploded across the room. Ivy walked across the stage, accepting the crystal-clear trophy with a calm, unreadable smile. But as she turned, her gaze landed on 2 figures standing in the back of the crowd. James Quinn. Henry Quinn. They weren't clapping. They weren't smiling. They were just watching as the daughter they had cast aside took everything they had once owned. For the first time, Ivy allowed herself a small smirk. This was her moment. And they had no choice but to witness it. The Quinn estate, once a symbol of power and wealth, now felt like a hollow shell. The chandeliers still glowed, the marble floors still gleamed, but the life inside it, gone. James Quinn sat in his study, staring blankly at a glass of whiskey. His hair, once perfectly groomed, was now streaked with grey. The lines on his face were deeper, etched by regret, by loss, by failure. His empire was in ruins. And so was his family. Henry was worse. Much worse. The once cocky heir to Quinn Technologies now spent his nights drowning in alcohol. His expensive suits were wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He had lost everything, his company, his reputation, the respect he had never truly earned. And now, even the arrogance was gone. One evening, Ilara Quinn quietly knocked on Ivy's office door. She stood there for a moment, as if unsure if she even deserved to be in this space. Ivy didn't speak. She simply gestured for her mother to sit. Ilara did. But she didn't meet her daughter's eyes. Instead, she stared at her hands, wringing them together. Ivy, she finally whispered, I need to say something I should have said a long time ago. Silence. Then, her voice cracked. We were wrong. Your father. Henry. Me? She swallowed hard. We pushed you away, and now we've lost you. For the first time, Ivy saw something she had never seen in her mother before. Shame. A deep, painful shame that no apology could erase. Ivy's chest tightened. But she said nothing. Because some wounds don't heal with words. A few days later, Ivy's secretary knocked on her door. Miss Quinn, your father and brother are here to see you. Ivy closed her laptop. Slowly, she exhaled. She had expected this. Send them in. When James and Henry stepped into the room, they looked nothing like the men she had once known. James, the indomitable James Quinn, lowered his head for the first time in his life. His voice, once filled with authority, now carried something foreign. Defeat. I was wrong, Ivy, he said, his tone barely above a whisper. I should have seen it before. You were always the strongest of us. The smartest. The one who actually built this company. And I. He let out a slow breath. I threw you away. Henry, standing beside him, clenched his fists. His eyes were bloodshot, his entire body tense. Then, to Ivy's shock, he broke. Tears spilled down his face. I ruined everything, he choked. I was arrogant. I was stupid. And now. He looked at her, his voice trembling. Now there's nothing left. For the first time, Ivy saw her brother not as an enemy. Not as the spoiled, entitled boy who had stolen her future. But as a broken man, who had finally realized the weight of his mistakes. James took a shaky breath. Ivy, please. Can you save the company? For the longest time, Ivy said nothing. She could have refused. Could have watched Quinn Technologies collapse and let them suffer the consequences of their betrayal. But revenge wasn't victory. She had already won. Now, it was time for something greater. The next morning, the business world erupted with breaking news. Phoenix Innovations acquired an historic $750 million deal. What no one expected, what no one saw coming, was what happened next. Ivy didn't keep the money. She didn't walk away. She took every single dollar and funneled it into rebuilding Quinn Technologies. But this time, she was in charge. The boardroom of Quinn Technologies looked different now. The air was no longer filled with arrogance and power struggles. Instead, there was discipline, purpose, and quiet determination. And at the head of the table, Ivy Quinn. As the newly appointed CEO, she wasted no time in rebuilding what had been broken. But this time, she did it her way. James Quinn no longer ruled the company with an iron fist. Instead, he sat at her side, not as a dictator, but as a strategic advisor, offering insights only when asked. His pride had been shattered, but in its place was something better: humility, wisdom, and a quiet respect for the daughter he had once underestimated. Henry Quinn. He was no longer the golden boy handed a throne he didn't deserve. Ivy had made sure of that. If you want to stay in this company, she had told him, you start from the bottom. No exceptions. And so, Henry found himself filing reports, answering calls, fixing problems for clients, doing the work he had once thought beneath him. It was humiliating at first. But as the months passed, something changed. He learned. He grew. And for the first time in his life, he understood the value of hard work. Meanwhile, Ilara Quinn had found a purpose of her own. Guilt was a heavy burden, but she refused to let it consume her. She took a portion of the company's profits and created a foundation for employees, offering scholarships, financial aid, and emergency funds for workers who needed help. It's the least I can do, she had told Ivy one evening. For the first time, Ivy saw something in her mother's eyes she had never seen before. Strength. This was no longer just a company. This was a family rebuilding itself from the ground up. 1 year later, Quinn Technologies was stronger than ever. The stock had soared, new partnerships had been forged, and under Ivy's leadership, the company had reclaimed its place at the top of the industry. But numbers and achievements weren't the true measure of success. Family was. One quiet evening, the Quinn family gathered around the grand dining table. But this time, the air was different. There was no tension. No betrayals. No unspoken resentment. Just laughter, warmth, and something they had lost long ago, genuine connection. James Quinn, once the ruthless patriarch, reached for his daughter's hand. His grip was firm, steady, proud. "Ivy," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I am proud of you." For a moment, Ivy just stared at him. Then, slowly, she smiled. Because this wasn't just a victory. This was true success. Not through revenge. Not through destruction. But through redemption, rebuilding, and becoming something greater. Success is often mistaken for revenge. The need to prove them wrong. To burn everything down and watch from the throne of your own making. But true victory, true power, it's not in destruction. It's in creation. Ivy Quinn had every reason to let her family's empire collapse, to leave them drowning in the ruins of their own arrogance. But she chose something greater. She chose to rebuild. She chose to lead. She chose to forgive, not because they deserved it, but because she deserved peace. And in the end, she didn't just reclaim what was hers. She built something far greater than what had ever existed before. Because real success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Real success isn't just about winning. It's about creating something greater. Sometimes, the strongest choice isn't revenge, it's rebuilding from the ashes and proving that true power comes from wisdom, forgiveness, and resilience.